one of the issues on the ethics side that we typically lump in is the regulation of this, right? And so part of the issue with data and data protection is that globally there are different standards everywhere, right? And the nature of this data, okay, again, we keep coming back to the idea that money is not in a vault anymore, right? It's code somewhere, and so it's information going in and out of servers. Yep. And when the data leaves a jurisdiction, it's not like it's physically leaving, right? But the servers may be hosting, data for someone in Hong Kong, in the Philippines, or traveling. The information could be traveling via lines, through the U.S. system. What do you think is the responsibility from a regulatory standpoint for consolidation? Like, how can we as society have standards for these types of things when you have this spaghetti bowl like mix-up of regulations globally?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. The reality is, I don't think anyone has a great answer to it. On one hand, the way the U.S. tries to extend their regulatory reach is basically there's a number of laws, financial regulation laws, that basically say if you use U.S. dollars for transactions, every bank, every country, large company in the world has to do in some way, then somehow because of that you are touching the U.S. financial system. And if you've committed some sort of crime or that transaction is part of a larger network of kind of maybe illicit transactions, then you've maybe fallen into U.S. jurisdiction. So there's a set of regulations that get to this. Now, but like you're saying, what if you're actually not even using currency? Then how does that work? So that raises a broader set of questions as well. I think by its nature, if we think about cybersecurity as well as cyber regulation, by their very nature, those are reactive things. They will always be reacting to what just happened. And so it's very difficult to put bright line rules in that say, oh, A, B, C, D. And as a result, I think as users and consumers, and people who will be impacted by these advances in technology, we have a responsibility to kind of think within an ecosystem of the values and principles that we might want to abide by. Yeah. Because I don't think we can continually, what we're going to find, we can't rely on law and we can't rely on governments per se to be at the forefront of leading how we want to govern this aspect of our world.
This is a challenge, right? So it's not like a typical negotiation scenario where I'm going to buy something from you and then I get the chance to say, well, I want the price to go up or down, whatever, right? Every single day, we click on potentially hundreds of websites where we are agreeing to their privacy policy. Sometimes you affirmatively have to agree. A lot of times it's hidden behind the scenes. Right. You're not even paying attention to it, right? And so on the one hand, that diminishes the value of those things. So essentially they're pushing that burden on us as the consumer to say, do you agree to this or not, right? But the challenge is, it's not like anyone's taking the time to read and understand those things. And then even if you did, it's still not like you have the opportunity to negotiate. It's not like you can say, go to Facebook and say, okay, clause 3, line number 2, I don't think this is appropriate, so let's work that out.
Yeah, the negotiation is, if you don't want to use it, then don't use our service.
Yeah. Or same with the banking system, right? The financial system. Either you're in or you're out. Yeah. And so it's not like we really have a choice. So even if consumers wanted to have a choice, it's either do you opt in or are you going to eliminate yourself from this entire system?
Yeah, so that's very interesting. And so we can see some analogies or similarities to maybe a few other types of situations. So for example, in financial services, in the financial services space, particularly in the world of derivatives, we have organizations that kind of market participants who got together to set a set of ground rules of how they want to transact with one another because they didn't want to have a lack of clarity or gray area or didn't want to wait for government or law to come in and say, this is how it's going to be. And so I think, from the consumer perspective, you're right. At the individual consumer level, we don't have a lot of individual kind of influence. But I think collectively there is some influence. Similarly, I think what we want to try to invite companies to do is to have these discussions amongst themselves as industry participants, as market participants. How do we want to create a fairer, more secure ecosystem for the products we do? Because ultimately, this is a very long-term game. But if they don't have that discussion, then in the long run, it will just become more problematic.
Yeah.